Hi all, in this video we'll give you an introduction to early game resources in ASKA as to help you get a better understanding of the game. Before we get started, note that ASKA's maps are procedurally generated. That said, we will show you how each resource looks in-game. If you like our guides, a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated as it helps others find our video. First, a very quick breakdown of the various item types in ASKA. Resources are usually classified as small, medium or large items. Small items can be carried in your backpack and are stackable. Medium items can also be carried in your backpack, but each item will take up one individual slot. Lastly, large items. These can only be carried one by your character or villagers. Now with that covered, here are the basic resources you'll find or want to gather early on. Jotun Blood. You will be introduced to Jotun Blood right at the start of the game. It's the lifeblood of your progression as it is used to summon more villagers through the Eye of Odin. Jotun Blood shards are located across the whole map and typically yield 2 or sometimes 3 Jotun Blood. There are also enemies like Draugr and Wights that can yield Jotun Blood, but usually the chances are low and not worth farming. Small and large stones. Small stones can be picked up from the ground in many places. You can also mine them from stone clumps, Jotun blood shards and some slain foes like Draugrs. You can also break down large stone into small stones. Like small stones, large stones can as well be mined from large rocks, Jotun blood shards and some slain foes like Draugrs. Wood. There's the darker fir trees and the lighter birch trees. Early game-wise, only fir trees are relevant as chopping down birch trees requires metal tools. Talking about wood, let's start with sticks. The only hand-gathered option is dwarf spruce, which yields 2 sticks. After that you need to chop down trees. As mentioned, early game-wise that means fir trees and later, with upgraded tools, also the lighter birch trees, which also provide hardwood. If you need even more sticks, and you likely will, you can harvest long sticks and logs for more. Simply chop them up while they're on the ground. Long sticks drop from young and regular fir trees, though regular fir trees require a large stone axe, which in turn requires a workshop. On the topic of wood, logs can only be obtained from the larger trees and with a large stone axe or better tool. Logs are required for most tier 2 upgrades, as in moving from pits to huts. Then there is firewood and bark. While sticks, bark and firewood can be used to keep warm and cook, firewood is the most efficient. You get it from trees as well as the tree stumps and breaking down long sticks and logs. While you don't get bark from tree stumps, you get it from trees as well as breaking down long sticks and logs. Though bark has a secondary function as it can be broken down into fiber. By simply shift left clicking on bark in your inventory, you can convert it to fiber. While it doesn't yield much, it's worth it early in the game as you need a lot of rope. Chopping trees will also yield plenty of resin, which is mainly required as fuel for torches. Another more location-restricted resource is thatch. You can generally only find thatch along the coast when harvesting reeds. While it has its unique uses, one can be forgiven for forgetting that this is yet another resource that can be broken down into fiber. It works the same as with bark. Since we have mentioned fiber more than once, the best standalone source is not to harvest it through thatch and bark, nor to kill wisps at the beach, but to keep an eye out for flax bushes. They can be found spread out across the map, not everywhere but in select areas. We often found ourselves going on flax runs, as rope is needed for tools, a lot of upgrades, clothes and armor. Later in the game you will also be able to grow and farm flax. Forgeable food. Note that some food in the game is seasonal. We'll start with the ones that can be gathered by hand and also by our gathering villagers. In case you were wondering, all food is generally better cooked. Early game, that's mainly through your barbecue, though not long thereafter that involves building a cooking house where you can discover a variety of recipes. Since you'll be starting out at the beach, mussels are often the first edible resource you might come across. They can usually be found all year round, sticking to larger rocks by the water. Moving further inland, food found all year round includes mushrooms. There are regular mushrooms like these. Then there are grey mushrooms. And there are yellow mushrooms. Grey and yellow mushrooms have hallucinogenic or poisonous properties when eaten raw, and your villagers will only consume them if cooked. Note that mushrooms pop up some minutes after it starts to rain and will vanish again not long after it stops raining. These nests mainly yield feathers, but sometimes you also get wild eggs. Feathers are needed to make arrows if you want to use a bow. Except during winter, you will also find onions in many places, which are great for healing. The same goes for garlic, which won't sate you but rather boosts curative powers. During summer and autumn, you will find carrots and cabbage, which mainly help to keep you sated. During autumn and winter, you will also be able to find beetroot. Finally, we ate a lot of berries in our first playthroughs. Found during spring and summer, they don't only keep you sated but also provide some water. You might have noticed that plants also drop seeds. And while you won't need them early on, they can be used later when building a farm. Beyond gatherable food, there is the possibility to get fish if you have chosen to build close to the coast. This might be something you do relatively early. Slightly past the early game, there is also the option for hunters as to get raw meat. Before that, you can of course also hunt yourself and get raw meat during the early game. That be through the many smolker, which might even come to your camp to steal food. There are also the deer-like creatures called fen that might be in your area. In some cases, you might also come across wolves and bears in the early game, but not always. All of them will drop meat hunks, which is a large item that won't fit in your inventory and must be carried. Alternatively, you can chop them into smaller pieces, which you have to do in any case if you want to cook it. That's done by harvesting them on the ground, turning the hunk into raw red meat. Most animals as well as enemies like wights and skeletons also yield bone fragments when harvested. But these aren't a crucial resource when you start out. Last but not least, some animals will also drop leather scraps, but that's beyond an early game guide. And that pretty much covers all early game resources you will find when starting out in ASKA and taking your first steps as a village chieftain. We hope you found this overview useful. Feel free to comment and please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.